This video is a reaction to an article that's come out lately where it talks about how Google is skimming profits from advertisers through hidden search terms. I don't think that's the case, and here's why. I'm going to go through the article and figure out exactly why I think that the article is kind of misleading. I kind of know what they're trying to do, but I also see why it's not the case. So let's jump into it. So the claim here is that if we're looking at it, and I just need to move my mouse. This is not my normal setup. I normally don't just do videos on the fly, but my marketing manager is nowhere to be found. So here it is. Google claims that search terms are hidden for privacy reasons and not performance reasons, so we wanted to find out. They analyzed $20 million, and they said for every dollar that you spend on Google Ads, they skim almost $1 in forced inefficiency through hidden search terms. So again, if you've watched any of my videos, I don't like the forced inefficiency. I don't like all the extra words. Let's just say it what it is. Basically, they said if you spend this basically says if you spend $1, then the extra dollar is wasted or inefficient. I don't really understand. Nothing really highlights that that's the case in any of the data here. So I think this is a big claim to begin with. So starts with this, 5.6 million without hidden search terms and $4.75 million in revenue in hidden search terms. So again, you're losing out on 850,000. I don't think that's the case. And I think saying skimming is a really big deal. I do agree that Google needs to do better on hidden search terms. And I do agree that they should do better. And the antitrust trial is absolutely true that Google is not to be trusted with any of these things. However, I think it's a little bit of a reach. So they say hidden search terms. So this is where it starts coming in. So this is what most people are seeing when they see this article. They see visible versus hidden. They see the visible has a 5.6x ROAS and hidden search terms have a 2.59, giving a 4.75x combined ROAS, and that on the surface is horrible. Again, visible search term data is much better ROAS, more or less twice X. So what is actually going on here? And the reason why this is, I immediately started thinking, what have I done wrong? Because when we look at this data in Savvy, we don't see the same thing at all. So I was like, I wonder what's going on. And the first thing I started looking at is what's the methodology behind looking at the visible versus hidden search terms, because some terms are hidden for a reason. Some terms are hidden just because they're hidden, in my opinion. But there's also a type of keyword that is more visible than other. And as we start going down here, they also say, okay, CPCs are higher in hidden versus visible. And when I then sort of look at that, I go, what search terms are typically lower CPC and drives a lot of revenue? It's typically branded terms. So I start going down further and further down. CTR, same thing, higher CTR on visible versus hidden. And I then try to dig through, did they actually look at brand versus non-brand in any of this data? And the fact is, all this up here, no. This is the combined, nothing else. And I'm like, haha, I gotcha. But they actually find the same thing in here. They went in and they look at, okay, if you look at it with brand, there's a pretty significant difference in visible versus hidden. And then when non-brand, this is where it starts being interesting. There's no difference whatsoever. So we go back to the claim of this article saying that Google is skimming profits, Google is taking money from advertisers, Google is hiding inefficient ad spend in the hidden search terms, and it's just not true, in my opinion. Arthur is allowed to have his opinion. I call Colin a friend in the industry, so I have nothing against him. I just think that we are cherry picking a little bit the data that's being pulled out of this article, and I don't think it's 100% Colin's fault. This is media outlets, it's other PPCers, it's people on Twitter, it's people on LinkedIn just pulling out the main first slide here and going like, boom, there's a problem. Much higher ROAS. Then nobody looks a little bit deeper, and that's where, in Colin's defense, they have actually pulled out the data and they are saying that they're surprised that this is actually looking like this. What I think is going on, because if we start going down, say all shopping, we don't really see a big difference in ROAS on shopping. When we start seeing that going down on non-brand shopping, then hidden terms is actually better ROAS. So that's interesting. Search is where the big differentiator is. And again, it goes down back to like, okay, almost 2.5x higher ROAS on visible versus hidden. And that is what we're like, again, if we go down to the brand, it's the same thing. It's the brand that's pulling in a lot of difference in the CPCs, a lot of difference in the ROAS. And this is really where the crutch of all this is, because when we look at it, it's not really a big deal. Hidden search term performance is not a big deal, because I've seen the same thing. It's the same thing when we look quarterly in our accounts in Savvy, where we're going to check, okay, what are the big differentiators? Where is search partner still something that matters? Is hidden search term something that's suddenly supposed to matter, et cetera, et cetera. We always look at it once in a while to try to refresh what is actually what actually matters in an ad account. And these are the same data points that we see whenever you account for, when you pull out branded campaigns, when you put out in search and in shopping, we don't see any difference in the performance between the visible and the hidden. So that's where I think most people just take way too much out of context in this article and just look at the big headline, Google is skimming profits. And I actually think there's just a reason for this. Branded terms are more visible because there is by definition, the brand itself, let's say it's Nike, there's no branded, like there's no privacy issues with that. So it will always be shown more or less. So we're having a bigger portion of the branded search terms that are visible versus non-brand, where there's a bigger portion that are hidden. So that's why we're seeing skewed numbers when we're just looking at it overall. And we need to dig down into the hidden versus brand versus non-brand, and look at the non-brand numbers and see, okay, what does the ROAS actually look like? And that's why I say, look at this in your own account. You're most likely not going to see a difference. Now, there are things here that actually matter at other industries. My industry, Colin's industry, is B2C, business to consumer, e-commerce. We have typically a lot of data. We typically don't have a lot of privacy concerns in there. So for us, this is not that big of a deal. I think this is a much bigger deal when I look in niche accounts when it comes to e-commerce, for instance. Like we had a client that sold this very particular chair that helped people have more mobility at home. It was it was horrible to look at. The search terms, 90% weren't there. When we then started looking at it, the search partners got 80% of the spend. Then we removed that. Then we have 90% of the spend over in hidden terms. The same thing with lawyers, high CPC industries with low volume, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Hidden terms are a nightmare to work with. And I think that if anybody that have a lot of data in those industries pulled up the same report, they would actually have a claim. Us in D2C e-commerce marketing, we don't have a claim. The numbers are really, really strict. We don't have a claim when it comes to non-brand terms that there's any difference in the performance when we start looking at it. So I think that this article is being blown way out of proportion. I think that a lot of people are cherry picking the data in here to try to say, hey, this is a big deal. This is a horrible thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I hate hidden search terms. I don't think there should be any hidden search terms. I don't see a problem with where there should be any privacy concerns. I don't search for my social security number alongside a keyword, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I do think there's some issues, for instance, when I use my phone and I try to just copy something through Lens, it will automatically generate a Google search. But it's not supposed to show any ads on that anyways, et cetera, et cetera. There should be much better ways to identify whether or not a search term is a privacy-related problem and thereby not show it, versus just hiding a lot of low-volume search terms. So that's it for me. I think it's being blown way out of proportion. I think that we can do a lot better as an industry instead of just reacting to the big picture, the headlines, and going to actually look at the nitty-gritty that will serve you better in the future as well, because this is not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. Let me know what you think. Let me know if am I downplaying this? Am I saying this is not that big of a deal? Because I don't personally think it's a big deal. Do you think it's a big deal? Let me know if you like the retro part of this video, because I have no editor, I have no marketing manager to do anything for me, so this is just raw from me.